Good morning, everybody. At least morning from my time. This is Dennis. We're on Watches with Dennis, and we're doing a Watch Talk live stream where there are a few new releases. There are actually even more that I probably should have done, but limbs, big storms last weekend. So I actually need to saw and haul some off. So I'm borrowing a truck and doing that later today because we actually have a break in the weather. So that's been lots of fun, along with getting quotes to get the giant trees cleaned up in the backyard, which, let's just say, probably more cost, at least based off of the first quote I got, than my new watch. So, speaking of watches and getting caught up with just sort of the usual homework or background bookkeeping sort of things that we do here before we start with the discussion, what's been going on over the last week. Obviously, we've had over the last couple of weeks, I've done a lot of video talking about micro brands and, not really looking a lot at them. People gave me a lot of ideas. Last week we went through 20. It was a really long episode. We went through 20 brands. I picked watches from all of them that I really liked looking at the catalog. I ended up ordering one of those watches. I did a poll on the channel. Nobody was surprised. It was Baltic, but it wasn't the one that I ended up recommending in my video. I recommended one of their more dress watch, I think the M01 salmon dial versions. I ended up getting this, which is one of their aquascafs. Yes, another dive watch. I try not to have too many dive watches, but they are pretty casual wearable. So anyway, but they do a bronze, aluminum bronze alloy like Tudor does. So I thought, let's try a micro brand instead of getting the Black Bay 58 bronze. It's less expensive. It'll let me try another brand out and we'll see how it goes. And so I'll probably do I will do a review video, but it'll probably either be at the end of next week or maybe early the week after. Just kind of depends on the schedule to get the filming done. I always script those, so I have to write a script up. So anyway, just because of all of the things going on work-wise and stuff, and with the yard cleanup from the storms, I don't want to overpromise, but there will be a review. I did do an unboxing video. I very rarely do unboxing videos. I don't like to watch them. I find them pretty boring. I think I only have ever did one for, it turns out another micro brand that I didn't even think about as a micro brand, which is Mr. Jones watches. I did one for Ricochet, but I did do one for this Baltic. So if you want some, I mostly went ahead and did that so that I for sure had some footage before there was any patina on the watch. So if I need to go back for B-roll, I have some now because I have no idea how quickly this will age. The Tudor, I used to have a non-58 Black Bay bronze, but I bought that used. So it actually already had patina on it when I got the watch, and I never cleaned it. Cleaned the patina off. So anyway, so there was that. And I also did a video about Hodinkee. So a lot of you probably are aware Hodinkee had a pretty big piece in the Wall Street Journal about it wasn't really any new information, but I think a lot of people perhaps hadn't been thinking about it recently. And it was just the fallout from their acquisition of Crown and Caliber during the COVID-19 pandemic and how they have just been bleeding cash ever since. And they went from being a profitable media empire to this big combined watch media empire that cannot make money. And they have been slashing staff. And in fact, I have briefly talked about Hodinkee's staff slashing on a prior live stream in 2023. And so anyway, I just did some reactions, ways I would, if Hodinkee wants to restore confidence in the hardcore watch enthusiast, which is how it made its name, I gave my own recommendations. I did not expect that video to do very well. None of my past Hodinkee ones ever did, but there have been a few people watching that one for whatever reason. So I guess there's interest. Perhaps watching something fail is more interesting though I had a very real, in my opinion, well-researched piece in 2022 about how they softball their reviews. And I did a whole analysis of a month of reviews to kind of prove that point. But anyway, that one never did very well, but this new one is performing a lot better. So anyway, I will get caught up with chat here, but that's all the housekeeping stuff in the background. And we only really have 3 watches that I have picked out today. There is an interesting Audemars Piguet that has come out. It is not in today's list. I might do a first thoughts video on it. I might go ahead and hit that one next week. I haven't decided yet. But I wanted to give myself enough time, especially since we went so late last week, so that I'll be able to get going with the yard work. But we can also obviously go wherever anyone watching live wants to as well. So thank you, live chat, for being present. To just hear one person just drone on and on about watches on, at least on a US time, Saturday morning. So good morning, Neff. You're actually the first one to say hello. And so welcome to live stream. Thank you for being a 99 Cent Club member. And I do see that you have a suggestion for me to check out Hoffenrich's watch's signature one. It just came out yesterday. Instant Grail. Wow. Okay. I'll have a record of this definitely in the screen now. So when I can go back and pull it. Oh, and then it's not signature one, signature ornament. Okay. All right. I might be able to look at that later today, in fact. So, Tuna, thank you for joining in. Of course, 99 Cent Club members, always very appreciative. Kevin from Florida, glad you could be here. GCM22, speaking of micro brands, any thought on Decla watches? I cannot remember. Did I talk about Decla last week? I mean, with you'd think I'd remember all these things, but with 20 different brands, I don't think I did. I've looked at them separately because they do pilot, right? They do Fliegers. So my general rule of I like Fliegers as a look, but I think I looked a little bit into Decla when I was considering. I think I checked them to see if they did bronze Fliegers, and I don't remember seeing one from them. Archimedes, I believe, does do a bronze Flieger. I already have a Type B Flieger from Stova, and I don't like the Type A's as much, and I mostly remember Type A's out of Decla. So they looked fine. I mean, it's a really straightforward look that is kind of hard to screw up. So if you like Fliegers, Flieger A's or Flieger B's, there's a whole host of companies that are worth checking out. And they don't all have to be IWC expensive. So Stova, Laco, if you're willing to give up the Swiss movements, you can get them at a very micro brand competitive price point. Decla's in that list. Archimedes is in that list. And then there are a few other brands that'll occasionally throw out a Flieger, particularly a Type A Flieger. They sell a lot better because in today's environment, they're more useful than something that emphasizes the minute's hand. But the only Flieger I own, I thought about getting a Type A. I don't wear my Type B all that often. I do probably put it on at least monthly, but I just like, it's just an interesting, clean little look. So anyway, so I don't have a whole lot of opinion beyond that about Declan. People are saying hi to everyone. Patrick with Pocket Watch Time. Good morning. I saw you just had a video. I haven't been able to check it out yet. I saw you had a new video come out though. And let's see, what else have we got going here? And GCM saying, out of these Flieger making brands you mentioned, which one would you recommend best? Well, okay, so because if you want the tie to historic, so let's say if that matters to you, which was when I decided to get a Flieger, I was like, okay, there were 5 companies that made Fliegers during World War II. IWC, and then there were 4 German brands, and the names all still exist today. Vempe, Langenzonen, Laco, and Stova. So Langenzonen isn't the same Langenzonen, and they don't make Fliegers anyway. So they're out if you want a modern. IWC is the most expensive. Vempe isn't much cheaper. They're mostly a watch dealer. Think of like Karl F. Like Bucherer is mostly known for selling watches, but they have a watch line. Vempe is kind of like that at this point. They do have some. They're cheaper than IWC, if I remember, but not by a lot. And so that really leaves Laco and Stova on the more affordable end. So Stova's designs are more modernized, curved cases. And so that's why I went that direction. It is a very comfortable watch. So I would recommend Stova, but you will be spending around $1,000 if you do that because they don't do anything that doesn't use Swiss movements. Laco, if you want the more traditional straight lug looks and stuff, they have that. They have introduced curved cases. Back when I bought mine, they had not yet. And then if you're willing to go ahead and get a non-Swiss movement, they're only a few hundred. At that point, though, if you don't care about the history and it's more about you don't want to spend a lot of money, a friend of mine has an Islander Type B Flieger. I believe it's a Type B. It looks pretty good. I don't know how well it runs. I should ask him. So Archimedes always caught my eye. If you like bronze, Stova does a little bit of it, but Archimedes is much more affordable, or at least slightly more affordable. I like Stova out of the originals. They have a big variety of watches, and I think they're relatively reasonably priced. They only have sale. You have to buy direct from Stova. So they only have sales once a year for their advent calendar in December, where they'll take the ones they take to watch shows and put new straps on them and sell them. So think of them kind of shop worn. And that's how I bought mine. A few years ago, you were able to get them under $1,000 US if you bought them like that. They don't come up used very often though, because Stova just doesn't sell a lot of watches. So anyway, Stova would be my recommendation. But there are a lot of other brands out there that people may have handled. Well, I see like Neff has recommended Damasco. So that's an interesting option. Especially if you're willing to go past the $1,000 price point. You don't need to go up to like the $4,000 range where IWC is going to be dealing in their pilot watches. So anyway, those are just those sort of things. Let's go ahead and start with the first watch. So you see them all in the title. I wasn't sure if I was going to take them in the order I've listed them, but I think I will. So let's go ahead and we'll start with this. All of these are linked. All of them are a blog to watch today. I was lazy and only used them as a news source. This prototype got a lot of discussion recently. So I thought, let's spend a little bit of time because I don't want to do it. I thought about doing a standalone review or a first thoughts video, not a review. And then I saw that it was prototype, and then that killed my entire interest in doing one. So I thought that's going to be live stream fodder. I can't bring myself to do first thoughts on a prototype. But so speaking of IWC, here we are speaking of pilot watches, and they've come out with this Ceralume ceramic watch. And so the thought is there will be something commercially coming out about this. And I'm not really, there's not a lot here. I'm not really interested in the specs of the watch. Obviously, you can see what's going on as the concept. They made a glow-in-the-dark watch. The instead of looming the markers, it's like those aren't loomed. They loomed the hands. They loomed the dial, which I know a lot of people love loomed dials. They loomed the whole case, and they loomed the strap. Now, my opinion is, I'll open with it, but share yours. I'd love to. If you're not watching this live, leave it in the comments. If you're watching it live, share it live. I think this idea is goofy. So goofy. It's ridiculous. I know there are people who will buy anything. So there will be people who buy this, but it looks so much like a toy. And maybe this is because when I was a kid, it was the 80s and we had all sorts of stuff that was glow in the dark like this, like the whole thing glue in the dark. And so I can't help but look at something like this and think, this looks cheaper than your usual Swatch. And I know it's not going to be cheap. 1, because it's IWC. 2, because the watch is ceramic. And 3, because it's a new approach to the technology to get it to glow like this. So I'm not saying scientifically and engineering-wise that's not impressive. I'm saying it looks stupid. So I cannot get behind something like this because to me, it brings back the Gremlins and the He-Man toys and all the rest of it from the 1980s and remembering all the cheap stuff in the toy aisle that you could shine a flashlight on or play out in the sun. And then you took it inside and the whole thing glue. That's what it reminds me of, except it glows blue instead of green, which is what we usually had. So that's my initial reaction to this. I think this picture is probably the best one that they've got on this article that kind of encapsulates everything about this watch. So I'll take a look at the chat to see where you guys are at regarding this, but I just can't get behind it. But hey, I guess it reminds me of Jurassic Park, you know, the Jeff Goldblum line. They were so busy wondering if they could, they didn't stop to think that they should. But that they've spent this much time on it to me means something commercial is coming out of this. They're not going to just let this sit. They're going to try and sell something with this technology. GCM says, oh, this is back on our discussion a little bit ago about the Fliegers. Oh, okay. Thanks again for this input. Very helpful as I discover Flieger watches. I just recently, I can speak, I do promise. Just recently, and I love the history. I'm Gen Y. I don't get offended by history. Stova or Laco, it is. And in regards to the history, here's my stance. And everyone, of course, is going to have their own reaction because Axis powers used the Flieger watches. My view is the Allies won the war. We get to take and exploit any technology as victors that we want. And so we will take their clean Flieger designs and we will repurpose them for good. And they, as the losers of the war, don't get to say anything about it. So that's how I approach it. It's not a celebration of one side or another. It's just a historic artifact that's interesting. Just like I think the Ally forces have a lot more interesting non-pilot Fliegers. I can't even tell, or not Flieger, non-pilot field watches. Pilot watches, broadly speaking, are probably a subset of field watches. I think you could articulate. At least the Fliegers would be. So, because it's all about just ease of legibility and all that. If you're thinking less pilot oriented, I think there are a lot of the, Dirty Dozen watches and all that are really interesting if you like that aesthetic. I'm not big into non-pilot field watches. I had one. I had a Marathon. I love the design. I just never wore it. So it went away. I sold it to someone who would actually wear it, or at least I think they would. So All right. Let's see. Catching up. Tuna says, I never knew that Damasco made their own movement. I didn't know that either. Neff. I love that IWC. It's super gimmicky and I don't care. I just wish they would do it in a Type 20. Well, maybe that will be the commercial approach. Maybe eventually it'll be a Type 20. Maybe there's some sort of play off of the Type 20 name that we could do that would be like the Type 20. I was trying to think, is there something that rhymes glow and 20? I can't think of it right now. Patrick's more in my boat. That IWC is dumb. That's probably a much more succinct way of saying it than I went into. And of course, he's in conflict with Neff, as I think most of us will probably be. But I don't know. I haven't caught up with the rest of you knowing what you think of this. Travis, welcome to the live stream. Looks like a Tron watch. There we go. Good 80s reference there. Unless, of course, you mean the new Tron. They do kind of look the same. But I think we saw more blues in the old Tron. Very interesting how they made the glow effects in that movie, by the way. And that was a commercial flop. Both of them were. But we won't go into the history of Tron. But it would definitely feel at home on the grid, I would say. Tuna says it looks like something from Swatch. Yeah, I think the glowing elements make it look even cheaper than a Swatch. But it's been a while since I handled a Swatch. I'm sure this, as a ceramic watch, feels nice in the hand. And, when it's not glowing, it looks okay. I mean, they didn't crop the hour numerals. So, I mean, tip of the hat there. Like they did a really clean chronograph configuration. I think it looks okay when it's not glowing. Start of that Type A chronograph approach Flieger, but there are other aspects to it. I'm not a huge fan of day dates. I own one day date. I have an Orient day date. And no, I take that back. I have a turtle as well from Seiko. That's a day date. But, so it's okay. But I mean, it's like, that's not a selling point to me. I get it. It adds balance to how they've done this configuration to the chrono. But other than the glow in the dark gimmick, you have to just love this format. And there's going to be a cheaper way to get this format if you don't need it to glow in the dark. GCM says, good point on that Flieger way of pointing. I'll keep that in mind. Oh, this is regarding, what the access loses. We get to strip mine their all their ideas and use them for good. Yes, absolutely. That's the reward for being a victor. So Tuna, GCM, it's replying about the British invented radar because Tuna's pointing out the British pilot watches got 34 millimeter. Well, the thing with the Fliegers, now all these new ones, Loco does make some original size ones, but because I think they were like 54, 55 millimeter because they were meant to be worn on the outside of the pilot jacket. Another interesting thing about the history of it, at least interesting to me, I know we're bouncing back and forth, but we are looking at pilot watches, is the Fliegers were not worn by the pilots. They were worn by the reconnaissance officer, which is why the Type B came out and it focuses on the minute hands. They were timing the bombing run. So that's the minutes were more important. That's why they redesigned the Flieger later in the war. But it wasn't actually the pilots who wore them. And then they actually had to give them back once they landed because they were government watches. But just how it was. So let's see. DeRosa, welcome to the live stream, says, it's the most Lewis Hamilton watch ever. Paul is in the chat. Hello, Paul. Glad you could make it. Neff says, it's funny because IWC lume usually sucks. It's bright where they put it, but it sure doesn't lume much on the dials of their Fliegers. I've never owned an I'll have to take that back. I've never owned an IWC pilot watch or a watch of theirs with lume. I did have a Portuguese, which has become the Portuguese line, but it had no lume, which as a dress watch wasn't surprising. But that's interesting to know. I would have hoped that given their reputation as being a major, I think people think of their pilot watches before anything else, that they would be really well loomed. Incidentally, back on the Flieger discussion, what makes a good Flieger is it needs to have really strong lume. I can tell you Stova does a great job on the lume, but I think almost everyone who's doing a Flieger does do a great job on the lume. So, it's a high point of those style of watches, in my opinion. Paul says, hi, I could never cope with metal pushers on ceramic, let alone the glow. Big IWC fan, though. I will say the metal buttons do look a little bit incongruous, maybe would be the word I would use, especially when we look over here at the glowing version. It's very not right. Like it looks, and maybe some of this is more like because of a rendering or whatever. But I definitely don't like the look of that metal with this brightness on a glow. with the coloration that they've gone with the ceramic here, I think it looks okay given the brushed approach that they have, but it does stand out in a kind of weird way because obviously we don't have anything to balance it off on the 9 o'clock side to provide any sort of visual harmony to it. Of course, we don't normally have that sort of balance on a chronograph either. So I think it was probably more for practicality, mechanical reasons, concerns about the tolerances of the buttons. If they were made ceramic, they could have painted them, though, at the very least, or coated them, I suppose. But they have not. So anyway, this obviously a lot of people have seen this. A few people like Neff are out there who think it's interesting in a fun gimmicky way, and then there are others more like me that are kind of like okay, well, but it gave us something to talk about. So what in that regard, thank you IWC for producing something interesting. Speaking of interesting, I want to move next to another watch brand that I normally really like. I have never owned an Aquis. And I actually really like Aquis designs by and large. I'm a little torn on this one. So new Aquises have come out from Oris. These are their watermelon watches, or as they call them, the taste of summer. I like the dials. I like the hands. Actually, the hand set on these Orises are one of the reasons why I like the Aquis so much. We got sunburst on both of the dial approaches, like that. These are renders. I've seen the in-person photos, though, and I think these are reasonable representations. I like the applied indices. Two things that I don't care for. One, non-color match date window. This reminds me in this configuration of the new brightly colored Aquaterras without their color match date windows. Like, I think we should color match the date window, but given how bright white the lume is on the markings, on the markers and on the hands, okay, at least it matches that. So not the worst thing in the world. The other thing I didn't pick up on initially, but after seeing it pointed out, bothers me is the bezels. These bezels are white, like they're white ceramic with a color matched numbers applied to them. I get that's where they're kind of make it this fun thing, but there's nothing about watermelon that makes me think of white. So I kind of wonder, how would these have looked if, say, the bezels were green on the red one and red on the green one? Probably terrible, quite frankly, because red and green are Christmas colors, but they're actually colors that clash. I only remember that because I read it somewhere, because me and color coordination are not friends, but they're not colors that inherently go well together. I would have rather, though, seen something just not white on this. I think it looks weird. Here's why I think it looks weird. To me, it looks like Oris looked over at Zodiac and saw last year's Zodiac fun summer super sea wolves that are they're not true ceramic. They're ceramic plated watches. And they looked at those, and I thought those looked fun. Very, very much a summer watch that you wouldn't wear all the time. And I think they were like, let's do that, but let's not coat everything, including the bracelet, in ceramic. Let's actually do ceramic, not plate, but do it as a bezel insert. So you have the steel bracelet with a steel case with this white bezel just there. And I think these would have looked so much better without the white bezel. And if they had done black bezels, you still do a ceramic bezel. It's okay. I guess it makes it more lighthearted and fun, but it doesn't go all in. Zodiac went all in. It's like you're getting like the white bracelet and everything. Here, everything else looks like a pretty typical Aquis with a great dial. And then this all of a sudden we've got this cream colored bezel insert just in there. I think it's okay up close, but when you see it with the bracelets, to me, it's just, I just don't like it very much. The price on these is horrifically high as well. These are Solita powered. These are not using their in-house movement, and they're almost $3,000. Yeah, $2,700 US. So this is not inexpensive. So normally for me, and I own an Oris. I own an Oris Pilot Pro Pilot X. I don't own one of their Aquis watches. I almost always like the Aquis watches. Even last year, those of you who watched the channel might remember they had a purple one. It was one of their Orstein Bear celebration ones, and I couldn't get it because it was K-State purple, but it was really well done. So I was like, it was a really good looking watch, but I could never wear it as a non-K-State graduate. However, here, this is the first time I actually saw one, and I actually grabbed this to talk about because I thought I was going to really like these. And then when I looked closer at the photos and started noticing what they did with the bezel, and I was just like, oh, the colors are so good. And then the bezel, so I like the idea. I would have changed the bezel, maybe just made them black. I don't know, and cut the price in half. Because I think getting near $3,000 for Sellita powered Aquis is pretty stiff. I mean, there's a lot of competition you have at this point with micro brands and other major manufacturers, even if you just want a dive watch. So for a fun dive watch, I mean, if you're only getting it for fun summertime, I mean, it's a lot to ask people to do. It's not. I don't think it's necessarily ridiculous. It's a 300-meter water resistant watch, but I can't recommend it, even though the dials themselves, I think, the whole dial, everything interior to the bezel, I think looks pretty good, except for that date window, which looks okay. But anyway, I'm rambling a little bit. Those are my thoughts about these. Let me get back to a picture of both of them so you guys can judge them both while I catch up on the chat to see what people who are watching live have to say about these watches. All right. Back on the IWC, Neff did note he's not a fan of the pushers. For those that didn't, here's a quick look. These are the metal pushers that we were talking about. So there you go. Went and threw that back up there so people could look at that. GCM22 says that looks like a newly released Citizen Tsuyosa, if I'm saying that right. I looked up how to pronounce that, and then I didn't do a video on it, and I forgot. So Tsuyosa, I think it's Tsuyosa. There's a new Tsuyosa in orange. The Tsuyosas, speaking of fun, colorful dials, definitely take a look at Tsuyosa. They're not dive watches. So if you don't want a dive watch and you just want something colorful, think like date just but colorful, and you don't want to spend a whole fortune of money and you want a mechanical watch, look at the Tsuyosa line. I have looked 3 different times and they keep coming out with new ones. I didn't know about the orange one, so thank you for pointing that out, JCM. But it's definitely a brand I would suggest looking at if you want something colorful. And in my mind, a true summer watch, which if you're just getting a watch just for summer, I think it, and this is just me, we all have our own price points, but it's easier for me for fun watches if they're under $1,000 and not under 3. So at under 3, I'm all of a sudden looking at a whole bunch of other like Tudors and stuff to have a new mainline watch. So anyway, my thought. Neff says, I have an Aquis and I absolutely love it. Not a big fan of these two. Yeah, I would be okay getting an Aquis with the Sellita movement. I have their in-house in the Pro Pilot. The power reserve is awesome. It is definitely worth, and I understand charging more for the R&D with those particular models, but I'm not anti-Sellita. It's just at $3,000, like I'm looking at it, I'm kind of saying why. It just seems like if it was closer to 1,500, I'd be a lot more. I still probably wouldn't buy it, obviously, because the bezel, I already know it would annoy me. But yeah. Just, yeah. Peter, welcome to the live stream. I hadn't said so yet to you. My wife's dad just got the Black Bay 58, and in hand, I preferred the Oris Aquis 5-day green dial, green bezel, I believe from 2022, 2023. It was gorgeous in person. Yeah, I've gone to the store and looked at some of these Aquises. Oris, there's a lot about Oris I like. And so that's the good news, though, as Peter has noted. There are a lot of other Aquises out there. So if you're like me and there are elements of this you like, take a look at some of the other Aquises. That there are a lot of really good looking ones. So if you like this general like configuration with the like the handset and stuff, I just think works really well with this style of watch, and I think it's a very Oris look. Whereas like their big crown pointer dates and stuff with the cathedral hands are out for me because I hate cathedral hands, so I don't look at those. Though they use a more modernized handset on some of those watches at this point as well. At least the ones I think with the newer movements. Paul S says, definitely better, softer cases, but I think I prefer the 65 or Legend. However, I'm kind of done with divers. I keep telling myself that. I actually just look because I have a winder that I don't have it turned on right now, but I was having watches and I finally put them all in just my regular cases, and I realized now after getting the Baltic that I have no more room. If everything is in a watch box, I had 3 boxes to hold 18 watches, and I have 18 watches, which is about 6 more than I wanted to have. So But it's kind of like some of them are like, what do you like? Do you sell them? What do you do? It's like, I probably should just buy another $12 box off of Amazon and just deal with it and just admit that there's a problem. Patrick with Pocket Watch Time says, Oris just makes me yawn. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, bold design isn't really something. The closest I could say would probably be the model I have, the ProPilot X. But I can't even say that that's a bold design. The case, the bracelet, the clasp, all super aggressive, but then the dials very, very staid. Now, then they came out with the Kermit one, but unless you like Kermit the Frog, and then I have the other one, like the plastic bottle dial. But like when they first did them, like I have the gray on gray on gray, which is as exciting as it sounds, which fits my personality. But the blue one and the salmon pink one were all very muted as well. So yeah, I could see why people would find it boring. Tuna says I can't get used to Oris, the name itself. Sure, I think is that German for bear or something? I think it's something like that. Neff says, I bought my Aquis from Joma Shop for $1,600, and that was a hell of a bargain for the case and bracelet finishing, which blows my Tudor out of the water. I especially if you stay away from the in-house movements, there are still plenty of, unlike Tudor, which has been dumping their third-party movement watches, Oris still seems perfectly happy to play in both ponds. And if you're willing to consider their third-party movement watches, there is a lot of finishing that you can get from an independent brand that is not a micro brand. So, and for a variety of reasons, I think Oris makes a lot of sense for people who are looking for something closer to the affordable end of luxury watch pricing. And it varies a lot, but they do have a lot of different designs out there. And their looks are pretty Oris in the sense that a lot of their stuff doesn't really, to me, look like what anyone else does if they're not in of themselves particularly bold. But Tina thinks it sounds a little bit like some sort of dental product. Neff thinks that Otis, I could see that. Yeah, the elevator company. It does sound similar to that one as well. Okay, well, we do have a third watch that I picked out for today's discussion, and hey, let's keep our theme. Last couple of weeks, I've been talking a little bit about micro brands, so let's talk about one that came up as a big recommendation from a lot of people. I used it as clickbait. I had a poll for people to guess what micro brand I had ordered, and Baltic was overwhelmingly, over 60% of you were like Baltic, which, to be fair, I've mentioned Baltic so many times just covering their new releases. I suppose that one was like walking into a wood chipper. There was no way I was going to get sprayed with the right answer on that one. But I threw Isotope in as one to see if some of you would think I was going to say Isotope. So just because they came up quite a bit as a recommendation. So Isotope, in collaboration with Revolution, has a new limited edition watch. Now, I'm just going to upfront say, you know me in avant-garde watches. I don't really think I could ever see myself owning or wearing a watch like this because it doesn't work for a variety of reasons. But the idea behind it is fascinating. So here's what's going on. When I heard about it, because I think it's because the collaboration Revolution is what I'm trying to see if these were expandable pictures. They are not. So we'll scroll down to where they are. So this is not based on the planet. And when I saw that there was a Mercury watch, I thought, oh, well, Isotope, they have the NASA watch, so this is going to be based off of the planet. It is not. It's themed around some other things. Like there's like a Mercury bullet train, which part of the case sleekness is supposed to be playing off of that. There are these three elements: the hands, the small second subdial, and the Isotope logo, which are in reflection to Mercury, the Roman gods, three muses, and then there's the actual element Mercury. So trying to see where we can get. The thing is, this is mirrored. This is a convex shaped dial that's mirror polished, which is why I think all the angles with these photos is really weird because they're trying not to get anything. You see the issue with the reflection. It's a mirror watch, basically. So it's a mirror watch. You can see how they're trying to light box shoot. This has got to be terrible to shoot. And I know nothing about photography. And it sounds hard to me, just given that. So you have this super sleek, you got these like partial teardropped lugs. I like teardrop lugs. That's something I associate with Parmigiani. These are like half teardrop. You see they took the Isotope logo, and it's kind of, I wish I could get this a little bit bigger. There we go. They made it kind of like the mercury, the element is a liquid at room temperature. And so they've got their logo kind of looking like that. There's just a stuck drop of mercury, the element, on the dial of the watch. I just thought that's a cool touch. The hands, they have these kind of leaf shape, and I think they've got a photo of them stacked. So the way it's designed is when the hands stack on top of each other, it looks like a little branch with leaf on it. I swear there is one here. I should have been better prepared, guys. There we go. Zoom in a bit more. So that's a really, like, engineering wise, that they got it to make it look like this sort of leaf shape, get this perfect little design. And when we're in the more conventional 10-10 positions, you can see that it splits apart and you've got these different, it's just so, and here's a good one with the flower, so you can see the mirroring of it. Now, why is this not workable? All right. It's a mirror watch. I won't be looking up at my face every time I look at it. It's going to be incredibly hard to tell the time in all sorts of lighting conditions. Look at how much trouble they're going to shoot these photos. And the same thing I whine about with half of Moser's releases. There are no hour indices on this watch. You can't actually accurately tell the time at all with it. Nothing's marked. It's all just a mirror. So yeah, you can get a vague sense of 10:10 and whatever seconds it is on this. It's just a cool engineering thing. So kind of like the IWC we talked about. This is just all about the effort, the design effort to get this functional. And I think they claim it's the first like convex mirror watch, which sure, because but who else would do it? Because it's kind of pointless. But it's a question about whether or not they could, not whether or not they should. This is a limited edition, 150 count. It's actually cheaper than those Orises. I think the Orises are 2,700. Yeah, and these Isotope Revolutions are a little under 2,600. So it's actually cheaper. But to be fair, you can easily tell the time on these Orises. You cannot easily tell the time on this Isotope Revolution Mercury watch. But very, very weird. And pretty bold. Isotope is known for having very creative designs. It's one of the most, after I didn't really know anything about him until 2 weeks ago when you all started talking about him. But Isotope is perhaps, I was going to say kind of there with Mr. Jones watches in terms of doing really different watches. Mr. Jones watches, though, lean heavily into artistic creativity. Isotope just goes more in terms of configuration variants and just being weird for the sake of being weird in a lot of the designs there. So anyway, we'll see what you guys have to say about that, but I will catch up with chat. And this was the last of the 3 watches that I had for us to talk about today. Underachieving Watch Collector, welcome live stream, says, I can't buy another dive watch unless I start growing gills. Yeah, I tried to limit myself to 3, and then I ended up with 4, and and I'm still on the list for a sub. So the thing is, like, what am I could sell one just for the sake of selling one. Because I don't wear my dive watches to work. Some of them are too big. Like the Orient and the Seiko are pretty big watches, so I don't really wear those. I do wear my Seamaster to work. It can slide under a cuff. The Baltic, obviously I wore it to work yesterday because when I'm going to do a review, I wear it for at least a week. But it's small enough it slides under. So I have got a couple that can work with cuffed shirts pretty easily, and I have a couple that's kind of inconvenient. So that's sort of the motivator for me on it. And I don't play with the bezels all the time. So for me, it's just, they're so popular. I just see a lot of different designs. So I end up getting them. But as a collector, I don't actually prefer dive watches. It's not my favored format. It's just when I want casual watches, there's just a lot of choice in that space. Koji says T2000 watch. So it sounds like we got a little Terminator reference there. Though I think the T1000 was the one from Terminator 2 who was made out of liquid metal. Not to totally nerd out. Patrick points out that it's so shiny. It is. It's very, very, very shiny. Neff says it's way too shiny. He's willing to go all in for glow-in-the-dark, night bright, 1984 called, and they want their toys back. But we got to draw a line when it comes to Isotope and their mirrors. And a little trick with mirrors that they have to do here. Tuna thinks it's a nice looking watch. Neff says, not as weird and bold as the watch I just put 50% down, though. I'll tell you that. Okay. Well, but this is about the subtle craft of mirroring, you know. And Neff says, Dennis might hate it. You know, I might. There's a lot of stuff I might very well hate. It's hard to say. But I'll respect your decision no matter what. Some of y'all like a lot of watches that I think are just way too weird. But you know, I get a little bit of stick in the mud when it comes to watches. Like my most avant-garde sorts of things are just like more creativity with the sector dials and maybe a little bit weird. Like that, I could get behind the hand shape on something like this, and I do like the Isotope logo approach here, but the illegibility of it just rules it out. To me, it has to be a timepiece. It can't just be jewelry. It has to be able to let me tell the time. But I could still like respect like a Meistersinger, where you do a one-handed watch. Like I could see a purpose to that sort of thing. I'm okay without minute markers, but I do want at least hour markers. And let's see. Patrick asks, what do I think of the new Credor Locomotive? I think I briefly looked at that. I'm going to have to load it up so you'll hear the clicky click click of the keyboard as I bring that into play. So let's see. I see it on Credor's website, but they have like one whole photo. So I'm going to go to Hodinkee. You know, they're about to die, so we need to give them all the acceptance we can. And we'll take a look at that. So this is very Genta-esque looking is my immediate reaction. And the weird shape of the bezel immediately makes me go, I don't like it. Because, you know, that's always my gut instinct on anything different is I don't like it. All right, this burst approach reminds me of the Chopard Alpine Eagles with the bird. I think it's configured a little bit differently, but the stratified lines kind of remind me of it. It definitely is different than anything else. Non-color match date window, that's a miss. Crown at the 430. I get why they did it, given this shape on this bezel. Normally, I'm good with crowns at the 4 or the 4. It's technically at the 4, not the 430. It's weird. I'll have to think about this. I don't know yet. The date window decision bothers me. Grand Seiko doesn't like to color match their date windows either, though, do they? Weird shape. I like this. Why can't you ask about this? This is nice. Look at that. That's great. Let's talk about this one instead of this weird thing. Why did you have to ask about this weird thing? Yeah, I don't know. My gut instinct is I'd rather have a Chopard Alpine Eagle to this shape. I like the dial, but for the date window. This shape is weird, though. It might be my least favorite integrated bracelet shape I've ever seen. I'm not sure, because you know I don't like the Nautilus. It's such a 70s look. But this feels anachronistic as well. I don't know. Tough for me. We'll see what others might think. Koji says it was designed by Genta, Dennis. Well, okay. Well, he ran out of ideas at this point. Now he's just twisting his shapes around to get things going. What can I do that's not, because it looks like the Aishinur and the Nautilus had a baby. That's what I think the bezels had a baby or something. I don't know. It's odd to me. Good morning, Trap Vision, and welcome to the live stream. And let's see what else is going on here. Koji says I prefer the original version of it, but it's still quite. There's another one. Well, I don't know if I prefer the original one. I like the dial. Let's just leave it. Can I just say that? Because I want to say something nice. But Patrick says, I wish automatic wasn't on the dial. Let's zoom in. Can we? Oh, we're already zoomed. I'm a fan. I wonder if my local Grand Seiko AD can get it. I mean, it's limited, right? This is a limited edition. 300 though. Titanium. Well, I know you like different, but you're usually more of a different materials person, Patrick, than me, associating you with just different shapes. But you do like the Cartier Roadster, so I know you do like unique shapes. Though the Roadster is just unique, in my opinion, for or is it because of the weird Cyclops they have on it? Why do you like the Roadster? Because it's a tonneau shaped case, and there are lots of brands that do tonneau, I think, better than the Roadster. But I know you like the Roadster, or maybe that's just the only thing in Cartier's catalog you can find that you like. And it's not that you love the Roadster. It's more just like, it's tolerable. What's the price point on this watch? So Credor's all over the board on their pricing, right? So what is it? 12 grand. Okay, so this isn't too bad. This isn't bad. All right, now adding that in as a limited edition and of a Genta design compared to other Genta watches, this is really, because that's like around the Igener price point. And I think now if I was having to pick between the new Igener, I do like the look of the new Igener better than this. However, I do not like, given what movement powers it, that where it sits in the price ladder. So I don't know. It's just the dial with the texturing reminds me again of Chopard, and I do like the Chopard Alpine Eagles a lot. Even though the bezel design is probably more derivative. Obviously, they're not Genta designs, and you look at them and it looks like Chopard looked at the Nautilus and the Royal Oak and said, let's do something like it, but let's not make it too clear that we're copying. So I could see why some people might not care for it as much. Interesting. And anyway, it was an interesting watch to bring up. Neff says, this Credor is extremely Pasha, which makes sense. I like the Pasha, though, more than this. So, and Patrick's response to all my questions is just, I'm weird. You know what? Fair enough. Fair enough. You have a style and you like it. Now, if they made this out of tantalum, I know you'd be all over it, is the thing. It's merely titanium. Is titanium a special enough metal at this point? I'm not sure that it is. But anyway, it's just one of those things. Paul says, it looks like the 32 millimeter Cartier Q from my dad. I like it-ish. Yeah, there are aspects of it. As I look at these sort of things more and more, sometimes they grow on me, like bezel shapes and stuff. Like, I didn't like the Royal Oak when I first saw it. And it's not a watch that's on my list that I want, but I'm okay with the design. I guess I have to be. I mean, they put out like 50 new ones every year. Whereas the Nautilus, I've never come around on the Nautilus case shape. I just can't. Most of Patek's stuff outside of the Calatrava line, all their sports stuff I don't like. It's all weird. And I don't like the Ellipse either. But again, I do have very boring watch choices. But anyway, that is it for this live stream. I get to go clean up yard debris from the storms, so I'm going to be having a lot of fun. I will take the Baltic off. I've got my G-Shock is here waiting to go for yard work. This is my yard work watch, so I will temporarily swap over because I need to wear this more to get ready to do my review in a week. But I will plan to be back for, actually, I need to quit clapping my hands. I will be back. I plan to, at least for next Saturday, to do a live stream, probably cover some more new releases. I think we're going to have more there versus a broader topic, but we'll see what crops up throughout the week. Other than that, if you made it live, I appreciate it. If you didn't, feel free to comment on any of the stuff we talked about in the comment section, and I will talk to you all on the next video. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.